Hello, everybody. Welcome to Covendom. This is, if you are a watcher, Season 6, Episode 13, which is our finale. So my name is Levi, Rowland. These are our grand finale.
Excuse me.
It's very grand. Everything's grand. I am Levi Rowland, and these are my fabulous co-hosts, Brian Cain and Ellie Barnes. Brian and Ellie are the High Priest and High Priestess of the New Orleans Coven, and I am the High Priest of the Pontchartrain Coven, right outside of the city. We are all elders in the Alexandrian tradition of witchcraft. So Covendom is a weekly show where we have call-ins, we have ambush interviewers, and we try to do everything from the groundwork of British traditional craft or initiatory craft, predominantly the Alexandrian or Gardnerian tradition. If you're watching us through YouTube, we ask that you give Hex Education a like and a subscribe. Even though a lot of people watch us through other social media platforms, YouTube is sort of the archive of the show. I am going to pass it in a second onto our occult news, which today is going to be Brian, and then we're going to have an occult demonstration from Ellie. And since this is our grand finale, we will not have an ambush interviewer like we have this whole season. Instead, we have prepared questions for each other, and we're going to take call-ins. When it gets to that portion for call-ins, you can find the number on your screen. It's 309-GODDESS, 309-463-3377. But I'm going to pass it over to Brian.
Hello, and welcome to the grand finale. So I was looking at news, and there was a few pieces. First, of course, I'm going to plug WitchCon. So WitchCon starts on the 7th, 8th, and 9th. Am I correct about that?
Yes.
So if you haven't got your tickets, do it now. I just finished my interview with Maxine Sanders, which will be an exclusive only to WitchCon. Not presenters, but the people who attend. Attendees, yes. And the presenters. So it'll be an exclusive interview only available on WitchCon. So Christian also interviewed Laurie Cabot. So those are both iconic figures whose interviews will be of great interest to many people. So we're very excited about that. We are the largest online witchcraft event in the world, and we have, I believe, over 100 presenters this time too. I could be wrong about that, but it's always close. So sign up now. It's selling out fast, and if you are there, I'll see you in the rooms for where the real fun begins.
That's right,
the Zoom rooms.
Which I never see Levi. Maybe this time he will.
I showed up to one last time.
Did you? But it wasn't when I was on. He popped on. I wasn't on. Probably in the morning.
Early days, yeah.
He's like, Brian's still in this.
I didn't keep vampire hours.
So anyway, for the news, I wanted to start out with archaeology, because it's something I always like to put in there. And I couldn't actually find a lot of really good stuff because it's the beginning of a new year, and I try to make it like recent discoveries. But they actually did discover, it's a hypothetical discovery at this point, but they believe they found the body of Arsinoe, who was one of Cleopatra's sisters, and that actually discovery was released in January of this year. So it's a very recent discovery. You know, they're not definitively saying it's her, but they have reasons to believe it. So, however, in academia, until you have 100% validation, you never say it is 100%. So it probably is, right? So, and I'm not sure if she's the one that started the rebellion, or if she's the one that she offed as a temple priestess.
I can't remember.
I don't remember either. Because Arsinoe was a very popular name in her family, as popular as Cleopatra, and the other one started with a B, and I never.
Berenice.
Those were very popular names. So there was lots of Cleopatra. She was Cleopatra's 7th. So interesting news there. To witchcraft, Africa is a very problematic country when it comes to. Continent when it comes to witchcraft. And it was very interesting because the president of Zimbabwe just had 2 rival politicians arrested for witchcraft, right? And so they have been arrested as political rivals for being witches. And I just kind of want to point out that that's not as far off for us as it is that you might think it is. The Republican Party in particular has pretty much branded every female Democratic leader a witch in some ad or another. It's not directly the person running for president, but Hillary Clinton was accused of witchcraft. All of them have basically been, Kamala was accused of witchcraft, and you can find the videos on YouTube now, so it still happens. And when I was looking into this, I found an article that just kind of pulled on my heartstrings, and I actually reached out to the lady involved. I haven't heard from her yet because I just reached out to her today, but I was hoping I could get a hold of her before the show, but it is a Sunday and I probably aren't open. Just make sure I've got my notes right. So this is in Kentucky. And this began in April of 2024, but has continued. Her city, in a small town, she runs a witchcraft shop called the Crystal Coven shop, right? And I want to encourage you all to go on and buy products from her store to support her, and that is thecrystalcoven.com. So if you want to support this woman, because she's being persecuted in her town, so much so far they had a city hall meeting about her store and trying to get her off of tourism and trying to block her, and people are afraid to go in her store. So she's managed to stay in business, but she's receiving a lot of local pressure because she lives in a very Christian area where Christians do wield political power. And I think people forget that in smaller towns, in rural places, Christianity often still wields quite a lot of power, even if it's just through social consequences. You know, and so I thought, bless this woman. I don't know anything about her, but I actually gave her a call and left a message for her. So if she gets back to me, I will continue the story with you later. But I wanted to just put a shout out to her store and say, hey, go buy stuff online. Buy a candle, buy something to support her. I'm going to, because if she's managed to stay open in the face of adversity, I can't imagine a city hall meeting about a witchcraft shop.
I could
taken seriously,
but I grew up in Kentucky.
When everyone's,
I just don't know how it's even legal,
But when everyone's a fundamentalist of any type of religion, they're going to look for the outsider and they're going to make them the scapegoat. That's that's one of the things they do. And they group when there's enough people, they group together and they do it.
So I just wanted to point out to you that witchcraft persecution exists even in the United States. It's just put under a thin veneer of something else. And they actually had it. Funny enough, they had the most popular minister who happens to be on the city council explaining that they just weren't sure if they wanted anything spiritual in their tourism market. That's what it was.
Sure.
And I don't believe that for a second. So.
Yeah, if it was a big statue of Jesus.
crystalcoven.com. Check out our story. It's on YouTube. And if I get a follow-up, I will let you all know. So to Ellie for the occult demonstration of the week. And the last one of season 6.
Yep.
Episode 13.
Where's my bag? Okay, all right. So I'm in bed. I had a big day yesterday. I went to the Chewbacca's parade and drank an entire bottle of Smirnoff vodka. And the reason it was Smirnoff is because I'm on a budget. My financial person says I'm spending a lot on food and drinks. So I switched from Tito's to Smirnoff and saved $3. Okay. But what I gained was a worse hangover than I normally have.
Yeah, that happens.
So that was a long night. And so then I'm on my phone and I'm checking things and Brian says, oh, by the way, yes, I'm Levi's intro, I'm news, and Ellie's demo. And I said, demo? I didn't prepare. But I'm a brilliant witch, and I did a really great thing today out of the shop. And I guess you guys have seen the news. It's been all over Facebook, and Christian has announced it, that we are making mega witchcraft stores. We are combining Omen and Hex in Salem and New Orleans and building, I heard today, the largest witchcraft shop in Salem. And will probably be the largest witchcraft shop in New Orleans, just knowing them all based on size.
Oh, this already probably is.
Yeah, okay, so we already probably are, but it's going to be mega, and we're actually going to
We have an apartment behind the store where we're filming this with a temple and an office.
Right.
It probably already is.
So my demonstration today is on making your own a charm bag or pocket fetish, okay? And I just want to show you how you go about thinking about it and doing it. So a charm bag or a pocket fetish is, as it says, it's a small little bag or fabric wrapped up with items in it, and you carry it in your purse or your pocket. And the charm bag or fetish, the idea is that it does become a magical creature. You charge it energetically, and then you ask it to work for the owner or the carrier. And so there's been general ideas that you use odd numbers, 3 stones, 3 herbs. It's different. There's many different rules for making charm bags in different traditions and folk styles. So I'm not trying to preach a particular type, but I want to show you, I made a bag. I got the ingredients for a bag for psychic power development. We have a lot of clients.
Where did you get these ingredients?
I know. I got them at Hex, Old World Witchery. I actually did get one thing at Omen, too, mugwort, because we were out of it at Hex. So the idea is you want to come up with one theme to make your charm bag. Some people want to make one bag and they put everything in it. And my joke is they want a great sex life and they want money And I said, okay, well, that's a bag for prostitution. So if you want to get busy on that, here's how you do it. But they don't really mean it like that. They want great sex, great love, then they want good career, good money, and then a third.
They want everything to be wonderful.
They want everything to be wonderful. But the one of the main things people ask about is psychic development for themselves. How do they bring about their own powers a little bit more? So you could use a piece of fabric. For our handmade ones that we make in the shop, we use this pale lavender fabric. And we don't tell the secret recipe, but there are a group of herbs and stones in the bag. And we have a certain method of charming it and tying it that I won't reveal because these are special recipes. But you can buy one handmade and already ready to go. And then you would still take it home and, kind of bring it to life and start using it. But we have all the supplies to make your own charm bag. I picked silver for the bag color, and we have a chart in the shop that shows what the different colors mean and the ideas behind them. My favorite psychic stone that I got last year and learned about only last year is called K2. I don't know if you guys are really going to be able to see this.
Why does that sound like a drug?
It is. It is. It's mined at the bottom of K2, which is in Nepal next to Mount Everest. It can only be mined in the summer when the ice thaws. Its base is granite, and it has flecks of azurite in it. That's just the little dots of blue. So the story with this stone is that the granite grounds you in the material world strongly, put your feet on the ground, and then the azurite specks open the third eye and the crown chakra safely so that you don't astral travel. So I bought several of these a year ago from the shop. I said, and the way I test stones and work with them, because I'm not a huge stone expert, is I take them home and I put them in bed with me. I either hold them or put them in my pillow or a little bag I put them in. I put one of each of these stones in my hand, knowing I wouldn't hold it very long, fall asleep. I dreamed all night of sequential past lives. And some of those I have done work on past life regression and validated, or I think they're correct. I woke up with 8 hours of really great sleep, which is really rare for me, with the stone still in my hands. So I knew that this was a really great stone for me. So I would choose K2.
I want to know what those dreams were like. Ellie's just like clinching stones.
Clinching stones.
Right, I know. Well, I have had some weird lives. I love rose quartz for psychic development because its basic message is love, care, friendship, self-love. So it's nice as a peace bringer. I personally use amethyst. Oh, no!
Not that amethyst.
Yes, I do. I use this one. I also got this at the shop years ago. I've been here 10 years now. It's hard to imagine. It's got kind of a circular top that looks like an eye. I love that. And then my favorite stone of all for psychic development is sodalite. And most people wouldn't use sodalite for psychic development. But it is a calming and peaceful stone. That's what it does. It calms emotions. And I think if you're doing psychic work, you've got to be rock solid with your emotional life. You just need to have control over it. So this has a little magician figure on it. It's just in the stone. It's got a little angel on the back. And so I use this stone for calling on my spirit powers. So I would choose some stones that are meaningful to you. Put those in your bag. Herbs, definitely. I chose the resin, and I like using resins in charm bags. I make a line of charm bags for my business, Allos Anthropos. I do use resins. Little chunks of this is copal, brings about spirit contact.
It's the Mexican frankincense. It's
right?
wonderful.
Wormwood and mugwort are both in the Artemisia family. They are strongly associated with some hallucinatory qualities. Wormwood is what absinthe is made from, and its chemical component, thujone, has been shown clinically to change brainwaves. So mugwort and wormwood, I use these together. I put oils on my wrists, back of my neck, but I would definitely put them in my charm bag. So those are 3 plant material things that I would use. And then the oils, I would just dab them on my stones and my bag. Frankincense, protection, and just such an old used resin for spiritual work.
Levi and I found out in the UK that frankincense cures cancer.
It does not.
Well, they're doing all kind of things with frankincense now. And then this is a mugwort oil. So you could dab it on your bag.
You could
that.
No, eat it or something. I don't know.
Dab it on your stones. But so you put, I would add to this theory, make your bag on the right day of the week. And if you want to do it at the right planetary hour, that would be a moon day, Monday, or Monday night, and whatever the hours are for the day. They change. The planetary hours change every day, a few minutes. Make it at the right time. Put your ingredients in there. I would also add a sigil. This is from Shelby. You could draw a little sigil for psychic powers, put it on a piece of cardstock. You could put your name and birthday on a piece of cardstock, cut it out. Or another symbol. For instance, if your grandmother was a great psychic, you could put her photograph in here. That's fine. These are messages to your subconscious about what this charm bag is to do. And then what I do is when I made my charm bag, I lick it with a lot of spit. I'm not licking this because I'm going to return this to stock. So somebody who's going to buy a silver bag in the next few days has got Ellie Barnes cooties all over it. But I would lick it with a lot of saliva, and then I would put it in both hands, and I would say to this spirit of this charm bag, this is my name, and this is me that I'm having this work for. Please connect to my soul, connect to my mind, and do the requests, perform the service. And of course, I would use my own Alexandrian terminology, seal it, and then I would start carrying it in my bra on the left side for receiving psychic power for 2 or 3 days if I could. During the day, I know it'd look kind of lumpy, and it'd be like, what's wrong with your boobie, Ellie? You got some big thing sticking out of it. Yeah, it's just my charm bag on the left side. But carrying it close to your body, close to your heart for even a day is going to attach it to the person it's working for. If you were making a charm bag to work magic for somebody else, you would put it with a photograph and the name of the person and probably put it in silk or something for 2 or 3 days so that the bag could attach to the person. And so they're so common. They're common in folk stories all around the world. Most traditions have some sort of a gris-gris. What is gris, Levi, in French? Gris-gris.
Well, it's not actually French. We're not actually sure of the etymology, but it comes from a West African language, most likely. Just like gris-gris, juju, like Fawn, Ewe languages.
I think it's...
Do we know what it means, gris-gris?
I think supposedly it's supposed to mean something like spirit or something like that.
Okay.
But I'm not sure.
Yeah, we're not sure.
Marie Laveau, that's what she called the work that she did, is gris-gris. So
okay.
one of the things.
So that's a common word, and then
and she was supposed to be West African.
Mojo hand is one
she
of
also
the common
had a
words.
husband from Haiti. So
Most of the African influences in New Orleans and Haiti are West African influences.
Mm-hmm.
In the craft, we usually called them either just bags or satchels or sometimes just talismans.
Yeah.
Fetishes.
Yeah.
Charms.
I name mine a pocket fetish because I
classical
really
things,
want us to know that this
They're all
becomes
the
a
same
being.
idea,
Same
though.
idea. This becomes a being. All these things group together, work together. I try to recommend that people read about what they're putting in their bag and make sure they're sympathetic to each other. You don't want opposing forces,
Sachets.
right, in the bag. So have fun. Go online. All the supplies are online. The cute little satin bags, all the stones, all the herbs, all kinds of other objects that we have. Eggshell would be great for protection, etc. There's really great recipes for fertility if you need to make a bag for that and carry that. I'd make two, one for you, one for your partner. There's just so many great reasons to make a charm bag, and so fun. You could even have charm bag making night with your girlfriends.
It's an enjoyable form of magic.
It's fun. It's creative. And I just want to encourage everyone to find some supplies. Start looking for some cute things to put in your bags. You can do anything else you want to put in there. Marriage, get a gold ring, put it in there. I always put $100 bills in my money bags. I don't want to put a dollar bill. I don't want to earn $1. I do, but I want to earn $100 as my base. My base is 100. So those kind of ideas, and I try really hard not to take that $100 bill out of my charm bag unless it's an emergency, and it has happened. But I keep putting them in there. I've got one with $500 bills in it now. Don't tell where it is. Okay.
All right.
All right. That's my presentation.
Real quick before we start questions, I want to put a shout out to one of our. So we do have listeners. People. A lot of people listen. More people listen than we are even aware of. So I was recognized at a bar on, was it Friday or whatever, and I was very typical Brian Cain because I'm always not expecting it in a situation like that. So this gentleman, and I presume his boyfriend, the gentleman just called my name out across the bar, and me and Adam were getting ready to leave anyway, and I'm just kind of like, oh, what's this, and he said, I watch your podcast, WitchCon. So that threw me off a bit. And I was like, oh, we have a podcast called Covendom. And he said, oh, yeah, that's what I watch. I watch that one. Da, da, da. If you're out there watching, I probably should have asked you what your name is. I probably should have engaged in a conversation with you.
This is very Brian.
But I ran out. So thank you for watching.
Shout out to the anonymous barfly that Brian refused to speak to.
I'm very awkward in those moments sometimes. So I want to say also, what were our favorite episodes this season? I'm going to say my favorite.
Oh, wow.
I don't always remember their titles, but I really liked Tracy's, the first one that she did. I really enjoyed that one. I know she did one once that was For the Love of Tradition, but I think that was the first one. I can't remember what this one was, but I really enjoyed that one. And I also really enjoyed Melissa Mayhem's. That was a really fun one
I did
for
too.
me. So, I don't know, other ideas?
I don't even remember.
They were
any
all
of them.
good. They were all good.
No, I'm in here drinking wine and nervous, so I don't remember any of them. I like this year. Oh no, it's trouble. It's, ladies get old lady problems. But I liked this year a lot.
Yeah, it was a good season.
Don't read my questions yet.
No, I didn't. I was just staring. I don't know why I did that. I literally was fixating on like a word.
I loved this year. I thought this year was, I think we're getting better and better. I think I'm getting better and better, more comfortable, more knowledgeable. So I appreciate that there's development, and that I think the show's funny and is, I think, getting more views too, which is a good sign.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to go first. Is that okay with everyone?
Yes.
So it's supposed to be 5 questions. I made more than 5 because I wasn't really sure.
We're going to ask each other 5 questions.
Yes. So we all came up with a surprise topic of our own. So we're ambush interviewing each other. I don't know if you guys came up with the title, but you've got time to think now. I'm going to call mine Initiation and Training. That's what I'm going to call mine.
Okay.
So my first question will go to Ellie. And my question is, in your experience, what is the true purpose of initiation in a coven setting, and how does it transform the initiate on both a magical and personal level?
Okay. Well, I think that first of all, initiation opens a door that you step through magically. It doesn't show you've already gone on the path. It shows that you're putting your feet on the path of magic and, in our case, witchcraft studies. I think it's important in front of others because it shows your will and your purpose. You believe in it. You want to do it. You're willing to be scared, embarrassed, and not know. I don't think many people are going to be studying an initiation before they go through it. I think they are private until you go through it yourself. You want to go through it on your own, in your own body. I think it validates the tradition. Honestly, I think initiations are important. I believe in initiation. Some people self-initiate. I think that's acceptable when you have no choices to learn from people who've been studying for a long time. But initiation is a magical ritual that changes the aura of the person being initiated. I believe forever that you will be changed by the process energetically, and it sets you on a path. And then you have to really take responsibility for your work on the path. That's my answer. Blessed be.
Levi?
I think initiation, as I interpret it, is to bring you into a different relationship with divinity. So in the same way that a Christian believes baptism, not all Christians, but the vast majority of Christians believe that baptism is actually salvific, right? Like you can still in some traditions fall from grace later in life or whatever, but like something actually happens. Like the sacrament itself has a divine power to it that changes the person who goes through it. That's sort of the majority of Christians believe that about baptism. And so I think of initiation similarly. I think it is entrance into a special relationship with the gods. I think it is also a sort of culmination of a call within a human that feels called to serve and grow and learn in a different way than standard religious experiences can offer them. That's not to say one is greater than the other. They're just very different. The fact that, I think it's very interesting. We talk about the ancient world a lot on the show, how much we love it, but I think there was always a purpose of having state cults and mystery cults, right? Like there are some people who do not want the mystery cult. You know what I mean? They want to honor the divine. It doesn't mean they're not spiritual. It doesn't mean that they're less than or whatever. They just legitimately don't care about the deeper sort of stuff. And then you have these other avenues of religion that was sometimes illicit, sometimes supported, depending on the situation. I think our initiations are similar to that. It's for the people who are like, the state cult is not cutting it for me. And so they enter into this much more intimate setting where they're working rites to experience divinity, not to simply honor, right? There's a different, I think anybody can honor the divine. Anybody can honor the divine. But I think to choose initiation is to have a very different kind of relationship than just honoring.
Very good. All right. Next question. I've got to pick and choose here because I ever did it because I didn't know. This is a good one. So starting with Levi, what level of commitment do you expect from seekers both before and after initiation. How does this differ from a more casual participant in a coven or outer court if you were to have had one?
I don't have one. And the expectation is my coven is a weekly meeting. That can sometimes be what we call hermetics, which is meditation, training, occult education, lectures, workshops, and then, of course, circles. Be they either sabbats, which are celebratory, or they are circles that are particularly focused on work, right? But that's the expectation. But I will say, I am very adamant that my students have self-motivated participation. What I expect from people is that they're hungry for things. I don't proselytize. I'm not going to call you and hound you for not showing up. You're just going to lose out. It's like, I'm not going to repeat myself. If you have the opportunity and you don't have a reason, of course, I'm not a barbarian. If you're sick or you're ill or you have a family emergency, of course, we're compassionate. But the expectation is that you show up and do the work and that you participate with your full self while there. And I think that is different than a lot of other pagan and more eclectic witchcraft groups where the expectation is more of reading together or coming together occasionally or only on the Sabbats or whatever. It's a formula of training that happens, and so the expectations are pretty high. Beforehand, I expect them to ask a lot, right? One of my biggest red flags is a lack of curiosity, where they're just like, I thought I'd do this thing. And I'm like, okay, well, why this thing instead of, being, initiated into something else? So I expect a lot of questioning and I want to be hounded a little bit because I want them to show that they're hungry for something.
Very good. Ellie, do you want me to repeat it?
Yes.
What level of commitment do you expect from seekers both before and after initiation? And how would this differ from casual participants in a coven outer court or our outer court workings? Mm-hmm. We don't have an outer court, but maybe the stores. What's the difference here?
Yeah, I think I would mimic some things that Levi said. I would expect a seeker who is seeking initiation to contact me, contact us over and over, show up to all the things we do publicly, soirees, rituals, lectures, seek us out with their questions of curiosity, and already exhibit a level of commitment and work ethic. Because we all know that once you are initiated, it's years of work. Serious inner work, training, studying, learning, getting better, practicing. It's not a toy. We all know how serious it is and how important the work is. So as a seeker, you don't know exactly what you're getting into. You can't. And it's oath-bound. And so you have to take it on faith to some extent. I look for signs from our gods for people, because I think ultimately, as Levi said, it's the initiation in a relationship to the gods, not necessarily to other humans. I look for signs from the gods, and I would state clearly we have very high expectations of attendance and workload. Of course, in the beginning, you have a little bit easier because you're overwhelmed, you're watching, and you're just trying to keep your head above water. But quickly, you will be asked to do a lot, and it takes work and effort. So I would talk to somebody about that, and my expectations are high for the effort and the work and the level of commitment. And to determine that about before initiation, I would want to see the person multiple times and also hear about their life to make sure they're able to do it in other parts of their life, committed, disciplined, focused. Yeah, I'm serious about that.
Very good. All right, we'll go with Ellie again. What are some of the biggest challenges coven leaders face when training new initiates today compared to your idea of the past? And have social media and modern influences changed the way seekers approach the craft, in your opinion?
Okay. Well, since I'm older and sort of old school, I was raised in a household where manners and etiquette were in the foreground. I think and therefore respect to your elders and, answering properly when you're spoken to, not interrupting, saying please and thank you, awareness, consciousness of what's going on around you. That's a limited today. I just don't see it in people the way I did when I was younger. And younger people tend to not have that example around them as much. So not to say that for our group, I think we have beautiful people, but in general, I notice with people, their manners are weak, and therefore their interactions are weak, and especially with a teacher or authority figure, they're not as paying attention as much as I would like them to. Social media. Well, I can really say I studied the occult and did my own personal witchcraft before the internet. I just say how difficult it was to find people and get information and order books through interlibrary loan.
You also have to avoid the Eye of Sauron.
The Eye of Sauron, yes.
Otherwise known as Christian Day.
Right.
Panopticon.
So I think it's a tool that has made things accessible beyond, especially for people who are interested in more rare books and topics like that. Translations, absolutely fabulous tool. But if you have all your magical knowledge from the internet and social media, it's going to be pretty jumbled. That's why I think initiation and following a system is so important. And the internet can't do that because our work is really oath-bound. It can't be on YouTube. So it's in person. It's mouth to ear, and it's commitment and training and manners. So people around me have good manners, but I've been around groups where they talk over their teacher. They don't listen to the answer. They talk back to their teacher. Oh my God. We would be sent to our room.
Happens.
It does.
But just as a challenge for me,
Yeah.
you know, that's my challenge.
So Levi, do you want me to rephrase it?
No, I remember it. I think one of the biggest challenges that I face is that for a long time now in American culture, this and it's hard to pinpoint when this happened. I think it really started in the late 80s, but I think you could maybe argue that it was more of a 90s, early aughts thing. Nonchalance is cultural capital now in a lot of youth. And so like what I mean by that is it is very, very unhip, to be devoted to something right now, right? Amongst young people. The nonchalance is praised. It's very much a non-joiner kind of situation. Even traditional religions are really struggling with this, where people are like, I'm kind of interested, but it's not that serious. That's like the quote of a lot of young people right now. It's not that serious, and I think I struggle with that a lot because I don't know what to do with that. Like, I'm not going to train you if you're feigning some sort of like, well, I guess I'll try it. I'm not interested in that sort of attitude in the circle. It's so obnoxious. And I think that the people who use it as cultural capital, I don't think they realize how much you're shutting yourself off from actual rich experience, regardless of what the path is, even if we're not talking about religion. We could be talking about dating. We could be talking about hobbies. We could be talking about art. There is this just surface level obsession because of the attention economy and because of, certain cultural norms or whatever, that really makes it hard to see people be passionate and deeply devoted to something. That is considered weird, right? Everybody's supposed to be detached and critical of everything. And I think that's just a recipe for nihilism. And I don't think it works well in a group that's devoted to, consensual coming together.
I'm loving
group
some
work.
of the comments.
I know, right? We do see all your comments.
All right, next question, back to Levi. Once initiated, what responsibilities do you feel the new initiate should take on, both magically and in their priesthood?
Personal responsibilities. Doing the work. Allowing yourself to come to the experience open to being changed by it, not with the attitude that it is an external thing that you are witnessing. I think the biggest responsibility is to bring yourself to the right? A lot of people, they want this sort of like student in a coffee clutch book club kind of relationship to the rituals. That doesn't work for us, right? So the biggest responsibility is to show up and to give yourself over to at least having the experience. There's this thing we talk about in education spaces, which is my mundane world of experience before label. Like, experience it before you decide what it is. Actually go through the rite. Let it touch you. Let it transform you. Then you can sort of form your thoughts. But the biggest responsibility is allow the experience to happen. Be open to it. Give yourself fully to it. Be fully conscious and present for it. And then you can do all of that sort of hand-wringing and thought process. But the biggest responsibility is to show up and do the work. Showing up is half of witchcraft. Mm-hmm. That may sound silly, but it really is. Like, half of witchcraft is showing up and doing the work.
Yeah, development of the self. Yes, I think I would say, to add on to those ideas, those are great ideas, I would want to see in a new initiate attendance, extraordinarily strong attendance with a lot of questions. Should I do this? Should I do that? May I help now? What should, an eagerness and an awareness of what's going on in the room and the group, really keyed into it, which is bringing yourself into the work. Not coming in and just sitting down and getting on your phone until you're told something. I like standing at attention and really being present to say, and watch what is happening in front of me. The high priesthood are obviously getting ready for something. There's things going on. Getting your personal life in order is really important to me. I think you need to be healthy, relatively healthy, mentally and physically. Your home life and your work life need to be structured and safe and good, trying to, not all perfect, but we're working on getting that all balanced. When you have a solid personal life, your religious work is going to be better. You're not going to bring all your problems in. I'm really strict about that. I leave the mundane at the door. Your personal problems, your emotional content, struggles, that's just not the right energy. Come clean, bathed and purified and meditated, so that when you arrive, you really got your head on straight about the work in front of you. And then the beauty of it, years, I keep saying this, I've done some of these rituals, 8 years now, over and over and over and over. You can't describe enough how practice makes new experiences, levels of understanding a ritual and a working that you just didn't have in the beginning. And that's why I would be, don't be judgmental. Really show up for a few years and put your heart into the work, and you'll be so amazed at the levels of development that are really possible within doing the same things over and over, deeper and deeper. So, I'm kind of a taskmaster, but I like everybody.
Right.
I do.
I'm going to go back to Levi for this question. Initiation and lineage. In traditional witchcraft, Gardner and Alexandria, lineage plays a significant role. How do you ensure the integrity of your initiatory lineage while adapting to the needs of contemporary seekers?
I think the most important thing is that any decision you make is grounded in your own work and experience as an initiate. I think one of the worst things that happens to people who become sort of, shall we say, problematic in traditions is that they no longer view themselves as an initiate who's also doing the work. They view themselves as a sage who has done it and now gets to go play on their own. Like, I finally have my own coven, right? But here's the thing. I run a coven. I'm a high priest. I'm still a witch and an initiate. And in the circle, that is what I'm grounded in, right? Like, I am also growing. I am also experiencing the mysteries over and over again, going deeper every time. So any decision you make needs to be grounded in what allowed you to have that. So if you are going to, bite the hand that fed you, basically, then I think that you're going to have a bad time. So I think that you ground it in your own initiation, right? Like, if I'm going to initiate other people, if I'm going to train other people, if I'm going to try to convince, well, we don't proselytize, I shouldn't say convince, but if I'm going to show other people that, this system can lead you into the heart of the mysteries, I have to ground that in my own experience of them. I can't consider myself this separate thing. I'm not, right? I am also an initiate, right? I too am with you, in this. And so all things that I owe to the lineage or owe to the tradition are those things that allowed me to experience these transformative events that allowed me to grow as a person magically and spiritually. And so when I'm passing that on, that's what I'm grounding it in. I don't think somebody handed me a toy that I now get to give to somebody else. That's not how it works, right? It's a river, and I'm in the same river as I was when I first walked into that circle all those years ago, which happened. It's actually the anniversary of my first degree initiation as Candlemas. So
I love that.
So it's on my mind right now. But yeah, I ground it all in that. I'm always
How long ago was that now?
10 years.
You're getting too old. And
I know, right?
Dragging me with you.
Dragging you with you.
I'm running an old lady coven. I made a video
Ellie.
for Brian to show him today about me being partying yesterday. How when seekers are coming to our BTW traditions, how do they check the lineage? Is that the first part, really, though? How do we show that?
Let me say this. In traditional witchcraft, Gardner and Alexandrian, lineage plays a significant role. How do you ensure the integrity of your initiatory lineage while adapting to the needs of contemporary seekers, which I think should follow if you do?
Yeah, right. Were you thinking that the tradition gets changed by...
For once, it doesn't matter what I think. That will be changing very shortly.
Right. I think that I think I'd go back to the foundations of the work. And I'm pretty confident that my teachers are who they say they are and who taught them. I'm very confident because I've worked with Maxine in person, so I can see. Val, but just from
who was my actual teacher.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, and ours, we studied with Val at the same time. I mean,
so you've
together.
met these people.
Yes, and I hear them. That's a rare.
We're
luxury.
presuming Alex really existed.
Right. It's a rare luxury, but it really matters to me. It's one of my attractions to this particular group and tradition is that it could be authenticated. So, but I'm not really a fan of, I'm a traditionalist. Like I don't think the Catholic Church should have changed its stance on any of its tenets. I think it should have stuck to its original dogma and said, if you don't believe in what we believe, don't be Catholic. I'm probably going to say that about Alexandrian tradition too. Stick to the dogma. It's what it is. It's how it was created. It's how it's practiced in our lineage tradition, Temple of the Mother. And if you change it to accommodate the new seekers or the new social standing, you're not really presenting the tradition. And I think you can say to people, it's not better or worse or right or wrong. This is what it is. If you want to do it, do it. And this is the title of you, Alexandrian witchcraft priestess or priest. And if that's not right for you, then go on to do something else. Changing it to your nature when you get in there, I don't like that at all. It just waters it down. It just makes the lineage watery, spider webby, and you don't really know what the canon or the dogma are. And I don't mind. I'm not a big dogma person either, but in some cases you need solid foundation for practice and things that work. Our system's tested and works.
All right. So this is my last question for you guys. So I've got a couple I could choose from, but I'm going to go for the one that's a bit off the wall than the obvious. The role of mysticism. Initiation is often described as an experience that cannot be fully explained beforehand. How would you describe the mystical aspect of initiation to someone who has not yet undergone it? Starting with Ellie.
I wish Levi had gone first so he could have defined mystical correctly for me because I don't know.
You want him to go first?
Use your own
No. I'm going to go first. But so you have to start by saying that these experiences you have in your body and in your mind and in your energy field through our rituals and practice is going to be dramatic and you will perceive them. I think it's good to start with they are not in your mind completely. They are partially in your mind, but they're going to be strong sensations and psychic experiences and all types of temperature and lighting and these things you may see or change powerfully in ritual and work. The presence of the gods, really, it's just unbelievable how much they can be shown and know and show up. So I would start with sort of some messages like that we do perceive these things as real. They might be called mystical, but they are physically real, and that as a student you will be practicing and doing it with us. It's the point of it, and that it is a mystery. It lies in another dimension. We don't really have the best vocabulary words for things like this. You're changing the dimension in which you operate. You're actually drawing it out, designing it, and opening up this world when you practice coven witchcraft. And it is real. And you will see, feel, and taste and hear the differences in what you're doing, the working, and you will see the gods. And then you have to say, but that'll be so specialized and internal to each individual witch, we won't really have words for that. You may develop over time some way to describe it, but mystical and mystery are good words for something that's really difficult to describe in the physical, even though it is real. I think that's my answer.
Levi?
Some of this will be repetitive if you've ever watched the show, but I like to go back to, the word mystical comes from the word for initiate in Greek, mustes, right? Mm-hmm. And they were part of things called telete, which were, these rites that we might translate as initiation, but it's kind of tricky to translate, but they were special rites and whatnot. You see them pop up in the Hellenistic world and whatnot. I think to describe it, I would go back to a couple of primary sources and look at the difference of them. I would say go look up some of the preserved prayers we have from like the Roman Senate, right? To Juno or to Mars, right? There's a lot of them.
Very long-winded.
Yeah, they're very long-winded. And they're always rooted in this idea of, oh, great, insert name. You are this great power in the universe. We need you to do X, Y, or Z, so we're burning these sheep so that you will destroy Carthage. Or we're burning this so that you will make the women fertile. Or we're doing this so you will, it's like, and that's that, right? They are a separate being from you. You give something to them, something will happen. You honor them because they're more powerful than you. That's the relationship. It's servile on some level. This is true in a lot of religions. Not all of them by any stretch of the imagination.
It's also transactional.
It's very transactional.
For the Romans. Yeah.
It's very transactional. You can see this in Greek religion too. Now go look at some of the texts we have from more initiatic or mystery-based things. Some of the Orphic gold tablets, which Orphism is not a unified belief system, but go look at that. Like one of my favorite ones that I've brought up multiple times is there is a golden tablet of the for the deceased that says, it gives you the instructions. Don't drink from the water of forgetfulness, drink from the water of memory. I do too. You are a child of the earth and the starry sky is the password. But then at the end, it's a very common thing where it says, now go tell Persephone, like go find Persephone and tell her, I too belong to your blessed family. It is such a different kind of prayer, right? Like, when you're in the state cult, you're participatory in the divine, right? Like you go to the gods and you're like, I'm one of you.
And the state is very transactional.
Yes, and the state cult is more transactional. So I think initiation is into that later relationship. So we don't go to Persephone and say, oh, queen of the underworld, who I am the great servant of. We go to her and say, mother. Like you go to her, it's like you go to her and you say like, oh, I too belong to your blessed family, right? I am the son and daughter.
It's good that I'm done interviewing because I'm getting bored of it. The word that's been coming to mind a lot about these topics and what you're saying is intimacy. More so than secrecy. More so than oath-bound or secrecy, the intimacy of it. Yeah,
it's like how when you read a lot of Protestant dogmatics, it's very bland, and then you'll read some Catholic nun mystic from the 16th century, and like the Protestants might love Jesus, but the nuns in the 16th centuries, they love Jesus. You know what I mean? Like it's a different kind of relationship. It is more intimate. It's I think that's why there's so much sexual and romantic imagery and mysticism across all religions. The Sufis, the Catholics, the mystery cults, like so much of it is like sexual.
Who doesn't want to have sex with a god?
And to be unified in it, right? There's this intensity. So who's going to do the next round? You or me, Ellie?
Me.
Go.
Okay, I got my instructions a little squirrely. I thought we were to choose 5 subjects with 5 questions each.
That's fine.
But
we'll call this the random witchcraft round.
So kind of what I have is a few questions about things that I'm trying to relate to each other. But what came in my mind, I thought about this a lot yesterday, was the discussion around Alexandrian and Gardnerian witchcraft as a group religion, a coven religion, and how that works with the individual, as an individual person. How do we navigate those spaces? So my first question was, where does authority lie in Alexandrian witchcraft? We don't have a pope. It doesn't really, we learn from people who learned before us, but there's no grand command center for us. Our personal way is through the coven. We work together. We're designed. It's a religion designed to work in a group, not really by yourself. Where is the authority? Is it in each coven? Is it with the canon? And how does the individual work that out? Brian.
Well, it's a complicated question, and I think all initiatory traditions are Alexandrians and Gardnerians do work with this. Me and Levi were talking a long time ago, and I think it's really much like the early church where you have a lot of bishops and you don't have a pope. And really, there's almost kind of like a silent council of bishops. My opinion is that the book is the only authority that we have. And I don't think the first book, I'm talking about the first basic book of shadows that all initiates should be aware of the contents. I don't think it's obtuse. And I believe that most of the things in it that we don't agree on aren't actually in it. Like most of the things that we do differently in different lines aren't actually even written in the book. Those are all oral things or interpretations of it. it's not a complicated book. If it's a hint book for those who've been trained, in my mind. Book of Shadows. So I think that's the only real authority we have. When you're in a tradition, and when you're a student of witchcraft, it's your obligation to learn as much as you can about it. It's the obligation of teachers to teach it to the best of their ability as it was taught to them. It's okay to further develop things. It's not okay to change things. That's my personal opinion. Because if you change things, then the next generation's getting something that's not what it was originally intended to be, right? Further developing, for me, usually either comes through ritual, magical effectiveness, or just as a way of training the original formulas. Like, I've seen lots of trainings develop. I've developed trainings around the original formulas, around the Book of Shadows, that it's not me changing the wheel, it's just a method of teaching. As a teacher, you're constantly trying new ways with different students, and you find the ones that work and you throw out the ones that don't. But you're still teaching the same thing. A math teacher is teaching math, but not all math teachers probably teach the same way, right? But they're still teaching the same formulas. So authorities, obviously high priesthood they have the responsibility, elders, teachers, they have the responsibility of passing it on. They were their teachers, their official teachers, canonized them to do so. They said, I think you are good enough. Val Hughes said, Brian Cain, I personally think you're good enough to teach what's been passed to me. And I've done it with others, right? So that's a vetting process for teaching, for running covens, what have you. It's not a perfect system, so sometimes some people slip through the cracks. But I do think the craft has a way of sorting it out, and it works out in the end. In a sense, I think it's Maxine who said the craft doesn't really need any of us. In one sense, the craft will use anyone to survive, and it doesn't need any of us. We asked for this thing. So if there's a transactional part of it, it's being a part of the thing. The thing existed before any of us were born, right? So I don't think there's an authority as a human being. I think there's an authority as a force, and we have a holy book that is not obtuse. It's, you can't really twist what it says too much because it's all in there. There are interpretations, and we don't read it like the Bible. We read it for what it is, right? So, and it doesn't change with the times. It just is what it is. You can make it okay. So a stupid person reading it is going to read it. Hopefully no stupid people are reading it, but if a stupid person's reading it, it's going to be very, very basic and not make any sense. If a person with a mind, or even an overcomplicated mind, reads it, they can pull out philosophies of it. Philosophies are in the Book of Shadows. Has some when you dig into the dirt, as Ellie might say, then you find all of the things, the roots and the seeds,
the underground current,
and the soil and the water and the gems. So it's all there, but it's the guidepost. These traditions are living, so everyone alive has access to hopefully someone who's got an idea of it. Where I would warn anyone is the myth makers. And it's really easy to spot a myth maker, because a myth maker is going to have a myth behind the reason why. It's not going to necessarily be like a philosophy. It's going to be, oh, this so-and-so did this or so-and-so did that. Or it'll be in the name of person. Maxine said. That's myth making. That's not necessarily a thing. Even Brian Cain said, I said to Adam the other night, I said, please don't ever do that to me. Yeah. Please don't take one thing I said and think it means something, because sometimes we say things based on what we're thinking at the time. I was just recently, I think it was our last episode. I'm being very long-winded, sorry. I guess you guys maybe shut. I was so quiet, I'm making it up for time.
You did well.
I said, that things have changed for the elders. I said, this doesn't belong to any of us, right? I'm thinking of people when I'm saying that in situations that I've gone through where they took this, ran with it, disrespected it, had a sort of privilege about it. And I think Levi, whether he was thinking the same thing, said they feel it's their duty to shatter the sacred. Was that what the words? So I'm thinking of those people when I'm talking about it. That's not necessarily relevant to another conversation, right? So I think sometimes that those of us who are public speakers, we may say something that doesn't necessarily cover the whole situation, because we are human beings and we're thinking in that moment and in that time. So that's my answer that went way off course. Blessed be. Levi.
Blessed be.
Sorry. I'll try not to be so long.
It's okay.
I think
you're doing good.
No, that was a very good answer.
Hard question.
You took it from the more spiritual, philosophical side. So for once, I'm just going to take it from the more literal, like religious side. The sources of authority for Alexandrian craft are as follows. The Book of Shadows, which we share with the Gardnerian tradition. So not the addenda that are added to it. That's number 1. 2, vetted high priesthood who can trace themselves back to Alex and Maxine.
Mm-hmm.
Or Gardner.
Or Gardner, of course. And 3,
or Gardner.
The correct performance of the sacramental rituals at the heart of initiation. Those are the 3 sources of authority for us. So it would be like, if any of those are not met, I would think that something is illicit.
Okay.
In the same way that in the Catholic Church, a sacrament can be illicit or whatever if the priest is not in good standing. I'm not a Donatist. I'm not a Donatist. I understand the heresy of Donatism, but like, if the priest, for example, was excommunicated and lost his privileges if he was defrocked versus, but then any baptized Christian can baptize another one in an emergency. There's all these rules, right, about like what has to happen. And so I think we have a somewhat
situational.
I know, right? Very situational. But I think we have those 3 pillars as sort of that is the triangle of authority. A high priest or a high priestess or both who can trace themselves back to the founders and that you can vet to some level. It's never going to be perfect. People slip through. I get it. But that you can. That's 1. The Book of Shadows, which is passed on and hand copied, and the performance of the initiation right to the letter. Those 3 things.
And right, I love that. And so the seeker, or even newer initiates, or people looking at BTW, do have then some rock solid material that they should be able to see and compare. Mm-hmm. If you could look at covens from above and you could say these people are following this structure and this authority, this group over here is not.
If there wasn't something we could grab onto, these wouldn't be anything.
And can I say something that might sound wild? I want to add something to your question, Ellie. It's been my experience. There's infighting in this community like there is any religious community, right? But I have noticed something that I find very fascinating. Even people who like hate a person, I have seen in like discords or social media posts where if they're asked, they will say, and I've seen this multiple times, they'll be like, "Oh, I hate them. They're a horrible teacher," but they are valid. Like people still care about that, right? They even that quote unquote people who are problematic or haters or whatever, they still care about it. Mm-hmm. And so I've seen comments like that before where they're like, "Oh, I can't stand that person," but yes, they are valid. They are an initiate. They like
I have an initiate in the Salem Coven who was they were seeking with people who don't like me and Christian very much. And so every time it came up, whenever I came up, he said they all kept saying the same thing. But you're in good hands.
But he's valid. But you're valid.
But you're in good hands for training.
Right.
Yeah.
Like whether they liked me or not, they're like, you're in good hands.
It does. People care about it.
That's called having integrity, but not everyone does. But that's good to know that it still exists.
Yeah.
All right, next question.
Well, the reason
Ellie.
I just thought of that was one of our ideas is that each coven is autonomous. That when you leave and you build your own coven.
Autonomy is about privacy and intimacy. It's not about. If every coven was completely 100% autonomous and none of the bishops answered to each other, there would be no tradition.
Right,
it would just be covens, which in a way was how it was originally designed. But since then, we've really created a hierarchy about this label Gardnerian and this label Alexandrian and the practices that surround them. If we went to Gardner's original idea, maybe we would be more autonomous than we are. But I don't know.
But that doesn't give license to change the tradition.
I think if you want to change, you can change and still be a witch. Just, you can't say I'm of the Sheffield line if you're not practicing what the Sheffield line practices.
Right.
That's,
just label yourself something else.
Yeah.
Okay, question number 2. We'll start with Levi.
Become a Chthonian.
Or a Catholic.
Again, because the Alexandrian and Gardnerian witch traditions are designed to work in a coven. Mm-hmm. What does the individual witch initiated into those systems, what do they do alone? What do they do at home? I was going to see whether you guys had altars and how much work you did separately. Of course, not just studying. I don't mean just reading and studying, but magical working or devotional activity. How does the individual approach that?
I would argue that any initiate who ceases to be an initiate when they leave the circle didn't get it right. Right? Like something has went horribly wrong. Like if they're not working certain rites at home, if they're not engaging with the divine, if they're not working certain meditations that we have and that we hold sacrosanct, if they're not furthering their mind even, and they're not exploring other magical systems, if they're not trying to constantly bring themselves into a place of the sacred and actually working the rites and learning them more deeply, questioning the liturgy, asking me questions, bringing things to Coven when they come. If I'm not seeing that, then something's probably amiss, right? So I'm going to be really honest. This is a big debate in witchcraft spaces, this idea of how much are you a witch in the circle versus, it goes back. Dolores has a question in the chat we'll get to when we do questions about orthopraxy and orthodoxy, but this is similar to that debate, this idea of, well, as long as I do the rites in the circle, I'm a Gardnerian or I'm an initiate, and then after, it doesn't matter. I am on the other end of that spectrum, where it's like, this is me. I'm a priest. And I don't stop being one, and Tracy, the initiation didn't work, right?
That's what made me laugh.
Yeah, it's like initiation, sometimes it don't take. Yeah. But so to me, Ellie, the answer is that's what they do on their own. They're doing the work on the own, in the circle, at home. There are actually, and I don't think this is treading on sacred toes to say this, there are only a handful of things in our full liturgy that cannot be done alone.
Right.
Now, those happen to be incredibly important things,
right?
Which is why we love a coven and why you have to be in a coven setting. But there are so many parts of this practice and this magic that you can enrich and study and really get comfortable with on your own. And I expect initiates.
Sure. No, I would too.
So I can actually make up for my last one, make this very short. So there's two aspects of me. There's what I do in a coven work. And part of what's autonomous about that is it belongs to that group of people. So even if you're in that coven, if you didn't participate in the spell work, I won't discuss it first of all, I won't discuss spell work anyway until it's manifested. But once it has, I don't discuss anything in a group when you weren't in that circle. So even in my coven, if you weren't in that circle, I don't tend to discuss it with you. So therefore, what I do by myself, I'm also not going to discuss with you. So all my private work, I don't discuss it with anyone, ever. It happens.
I love that answer. Yeah. I love that.
But keeping it secret, keeping it sacred.
That's kind of a topic that's off topic. Okay, thinking about the individual self and in the tradition or the coven. Starting with Brian, what do you think is the future of Alexandrian and Gardnerian witchcraft as we age and as older people age and become elders? What do you think about, let's say, 20, 30 years from now? What do you see?
First of all, I have no intention of aging.
I know. I didn't mean you. I didn't mean you, Brian. Me and Levi.
I think that Gardnerian and Alexandrian craft will continue, and that you will always have your adherents who are practicing it to the best of their abilities. And it is a secret. It's a secret priesthood and a sort of a secret society. So the growth of witchcraft, or the seeming growth of witchcraft, or the popularity, or I just read an article today about how it's a multi-million-dollar business. I'm like, it is absolutely not. But anyway, so in any case, these labels have gone on so much that if it's being sold on Amazon, it must be a multi-million-dollar business. That's not really the craft. I think the craft is going to continue as it has, and that you're going to have people. Yes, you are going to have people split off and do their own thing, or change practices, or do traditions, or make their own traditions. It's been happening the whole time. But I think that the priesthood will continue, just as it has now. Will it possibly go extinct someday? Maybe. I don't suspect it will happen in my lifetime or in lifetimes to come anytime soon. I think these things are very solid right now. I think they're the North Star of the craft. And when they die out, it'll probably be when mankind dies out.
Let's hope so.
Which part are you hoping for, Ellie? The destruction of all humankind?
Yes, right. No, I mean, I've said a lot. And to go back to my first question or second question, I believe in doing the great work on yourself. And our tradition gives you the tools, really strong tools to do that, which is what you're talking about with outside of the circle. In your priesthood, you take it seriously and you're really doing it all the time. Yeah. It becomes the motivation for your life. Okay, Levi, future of Alexandrian and Gardnerian witchcraft. I kind of was thinking about like just keeping the tradition the same and solid, and with seeming and younger people having all this stuff online to do in the occult. They don't, it's just such a different world. Wild West.
Occult is online.
Right. Well,
I challenge that notion.
I think
whatever they think it is. They think they're
the topics are.
I am always very leery of trying to crystal ball groups, right? Because things can just happen that out of nowhere. Certain things can rise, certain things can fall. It happens way quicker sometimes than people think it will, or it happens more in an attenuated fashion. I think that the future is interesting because I actually, if I was going to hazard here's what I think is going to happen in the future, and this is very I could be dead wrong. This is not some oracle. I think we're going to see the collapse of popular witchcraft in the next probably 10 years. I think it was a trend in spirituality, right? Remember, at one point, everybody was a yogi and nobody was a witch.
Right.
Remember that? It wasn't that long ago.
See, I've already seen it happen 2 or 3 times now.
So I think this has peaked a little bit now. It's almost beyond parody.
I think it's Appalachia now.
Even that's not popular anymore. So I think witchcraft, I mean all of it, Brian. The hoodoo, the conjure, the witchcraft, all of it is peaking. You can now buy
once their eggs cost $20, they're going to need something.
It's I think we're seeing a peak of it right now where it's if you can buy a crystal manifestation kit at the TJ Maxx, we've peaked, right? We jumped the shark as a TV show. I long for that because I think that we're going to see a sort of collapse of some of the more public foolishness. And I think you will see the people who stay are the people who stay. Mm-hmm. Right?
Well, that's always been.
And that's always been. Yeah. So it's I think it always goes in cycles.
Starts with an L.
Lifers.
Right? Yeah.
But I think we're hitting the peak of the popular witchcraft phase. I don't think it's going to last much longer.
I felt like the Alexandrian and Gardnerian tradition have proven themselves through thick and thin. And the real people that want to do really strong religion and study and praxis are going to keep seeing us. And they've been around a while. They're holding up. They still have covens. They have respected members. I mean, we would say that about maybe the offshoots of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. There's some lodges that have been around long enough that we've kind of watched that they stay steady, or Rosicrucian lodges, or Freemasonry for that matter. So I feel that our working the tradition strongly and even being public about it as we are, trying to say we are here and we're doing this work, you can find it, is going to pay us back in the end.
You've got my thing in your hand.
I kept wondering.
I was wondering why you kept getting your earbud pulled out.
I didn't realize you've been pulling my earbud out.
Ellie's been slowly pulling his earbuds out.
Here's my cord. Because at some point, Brian was standing on it. Brian was standing on the cord, and I thought,
I kept looking at the cameraman. Why is he touching his
there's
ears?
Brian.
I kept falling in.
And
I didn't know why. Ellie's holding it, pulling it out.
And he was standing on it, and I thought, look, he's standing on my cord. No, he's standing on his own cord, dang it. Here's my cord, and my earbuds are falling out, too. So I'm excited about the traditions standing and staying alive and strong, and I think we're going to be more important. I don't have any more, because I stopped thinking.
Very good. So Levi's turn.
Stop thinking about them.
So I had a topic. I followed the assignment.
Thank you.
I'm good, thank you.
I still have some. Thank you.
I followed the assignment. I have 5 questions of a singular topic, and my topic was magical pilgrimage and exploration.
Sorry.
So since we all have traveled a lot, kind of was my inspiration for this. So my first question, I'll start with Ellie, is what is a place that you went, and we're talking about magical and spiritual places, not just like the Pizza Hut. What is a place that you went to with a big expectation for an oomph or for a spiritual experience that really let you down?
Oh, wow. Gosh, nothing.
You loved them all?
I loved them all. More and more. I did a lot of things in England and Scotland. Went to places and uncovered and had my list of things I really wanted to see that might not even be on the beaten path. It's a place that let me down. Probably more than that. I went to a few exhibits in Mexico that were like a ritual dance and rituals and things, and they ended up being real hokey. And I was thinking, this is not good at
touristy.
All. Too touristy. I also have really not liked going to a sacred place where it's full of tourists with cameras and they're all talking and eating, and I'm like, it's Stonehenge, for God's sake. Can you just put your Fritos down for a minute, Not that happened. We were able to get private tickets and went at dawn, 6 a.m., and had it to ourselves. 2 security guards, and then my mom, myself, my daughter, our best friend, her daughter, and our cousin all met there. That was unbelievable. But as soon as we got off the grounds and that opportunity ended, and that was a ticket that we were able to buy because our guide was a retired history person in the, what is it, something trust? What's in the UK? The National Trust employee. When we got off the grounds, which we had to do at a certain time because the new tour buses were arriving and they couldn't see that someone had access to it because it's roped off. I mean, we were in the circle. We were allowed to move and touch.
To do that. It was lovely.
Right? So then we just watched. We were at the gift shop and back in our car, and thousands of people descended upon Stonehenge with cameras and snack food and Cokes, and the whole thing just fell apart in front of me. I was like, look at this poor place. It doesn't want all this silliness. And Matt ruined that for me. A couple of the things in Egypt I did were highly crowded. And I don't dig on that too much. Maybe that's because of the people, but not the places. I can't think of anything that really let me down.
That's an acceptable answer. Brian, do you have a place that you were going to and you were expecting something and you were just dun-da-da?
Well, I've gone to so many places, especially in the UK, but the one that stands out in my mind as being like a bit disappointing was Avebury, which I've been told by other people that they had an opposite experience. But when I went, first of all, part of it is a town is in it, like a town is there. But when I went, it was very touristy, and there were lots of people walking all over the place, and it just seemed very zapped. Like it was still impressive to see, but it seemed very unalive. But I'd been to other places that were very alive, so I don't know if that's really a fair assessment, and I've only been there once. So, but that was because that's one of the more famous ones, and I think it was Rosie that told me it's actually one of her favorites, so it may have just been me or the day, but it just seemed very like people were treating them like they were just big stones in a park.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's very different, you know, opposite of Stonehenge. I expected Stonehenge to be like that, and it wasn't for me. Stonehenge actually did have a zap, even though they wouldn't let us touch things. Some of us found a way.
More intimate.
That's my answer.
My follow-up question, we'll go back to Ellie, is similar. What is a place you were not expecting anything, but had a very intense experience of energy or spiritual presence or anything like that?
In places like Four Corners, where there is the Hopi stone settlements in the cliffs and then down in the riverbeds. What's the big one that we go to out there? I haven't really thought about that trip in quite a while, but it's one of the main stone housing for those early American Indians in the Midwest. So I was expecting, that was in my phase of studying all types of American Indian philosophy, and I camped and hiked in all the states of the U.S. except Alaska and Hawaii, and I went to as many reservations as I could. This was about a 5-year period. So I was expecting big shamanistic fireworks at some of these places, and I got there and I thought, this is a lot of rocks, and I just didn't feel any real spiritual energy. That might be because I don't resonate with that tradition. You know, I don't.
But the question was, what's a place that you weren't expecting it and it showed up anyway?
It's the opposite.
The opposite. So,
I answered the first question. Oh gosh, maybe places like my own bedroom.
Fair answer. What about you, Brian? Was there ever a place you weren't expecting something from super magically, and then oof?
Probably, probably places that aren't actual sacred sites.
I think we felt that in Bath a little.
Yes. But there was a temple there, and I definitely found it. The one that's going to come to my mind, it wasn't because I didn't expect it. It's because Christian and I, on this particular trip, were on a fast forward of seeing all these places, right? So we were seeing all these stone circles in the UK. I think in this trip we were, well, you could tell me where we were, because it was a place called Wayland Smithy. And that place had a major zap that both me and Christian felt very strongly, and it's very off the beaten track, and it's very path, and it's very small. It's not anything spectacular, but that place had a zap. Like the fairies were still there. They were still, it was still alive, and people had been working it, and that might be why there were wheat weavings and offerings currently there, and so that might be why it was alive. But we both thought that was a very impressive site. I want to say it's in Wales, but I may be crazy.
I think it's in England.
It is
But it might
in
be
England,
a border, because we didn't really visit places
in the southwest.
Southwest.
Yeah, I don't remember for sure, but that place was a surprise. As far as like places that are magical, probably not sacred sites that I've been to where I thought, and I just can't think of one right now. That's probably happened. Yeah.
So my third one's a pretty quick one, probably. Ellie, what is a place you've not been yet that is very much on your list that you are excited to go to for a magical or spiritual reason?
Not been to yet. Well, I want to go back to Portugal and go to different places there. I felt that was a very magical place. I believe it or not, I've not been to Italy. I don't know about magical studies there. I would go to probably the Etruscan places and see if I felt any, magical energies and powers there. Mainly because of Leland's Etruscan Roman remains and the idea that witchcraft tradition came out of Tuscan area. Basque, maybe Spain, northern Spain,
and Spain and France.
Yeah. I think that's a real interesting
That's
place
a very good
to
answer.
study, right? And to study, because I'm really interested.
There's a lot of witchcraft lore there.
I'm interested in finding old witchcraft. I love that idea. And
Emma Wilby just came. Her last book is called "Invoking the Aquilare," which is about Basque witchcraft trials.
Okay, I'll look at that. Okay, awesome. So those are some ideas, but the whole dang world. I do not want to go into outer space, and I do not want to go underwater. Okay, not going to any underwater temples, and I'm not going to go to the moon for spiritual stuff either. I'm just not doing it.
Brian, what about you? What's still on the list? A big one.
I can't think of what the name of it right now, but there is this temple in Egypt we didn't get to go to when we were there that's supposed to be the birthplace of Osiris. And I don't remember why we weren't able to go there, but we weren't able to go. I don't remember all the names.
I'll look that up. I don't know.
I want to say it's Abydos, but I think I actually went to Abydos, so I don't know. So that's one place I'd like to go. Basque would certainly be interesting. I'm very interested in going to the Isle of Man because that's where my name comes from. Yeah. But I don't know what there is to see. I know that they still have a custom today where they go on I think it's the summer solstice. You have to bring a certain grass up to the top of hills to pay Manon McLear his rent. And they still do that as a custom today, so that's fair, because the Isle of Man is named after him. So it's, that would be interesting, and that's where the first witchcraft museum was, but I don't really know what there is there today, and when I look it up, it doesn't really look like a whole lot. Apparently it's a huge motorcycle race that goes on there or something like that. But there's plenty of places. I'd like to see more places in Italy. Funny that you say that, because I didn't get to stay in Rome very long. So I didn't get to see lots of things that are probably there. Nemi was really impressive.
Nemi is amazing.
Yeah,
it's one of the most magical places I've ever been in my life.
That was amazing. That was a surprise.
The lake takes your breath away if you go to the top of the mountains and you can see it in the mirror.
Christine and I worked there, right at the base. Well, Christian was there too, but.
It's
so that'll be my next. Do you think that should be what I do next?
You should definitely do Italy.
It's fun.
Rome is. Yeah. There are the Mithraeums.
I didn't like the Colosseum.
churches.
The Colosseum didn't interest me.
No, but I like the Mithraeum. There's a Mithraeum we went to under San Clemente, one of the oldest churches in Rome, and it's where Saint Clement is buried, one of the first popes. But there's underneath his is a Mithraeum with the seats.
And I didn't go to the Vatican even.
I did, and I hated it.
I didn't go there.
It's the least magical place I've ever been in my life.
So
I hated being there the entire time.
Yeah.
Have either
of
you?
The statuary and things like that.
They have great museums.
Yeah.
Have either of you been to Boz Castle? To the Witchcraft
No.
Museum there? I have not. It's been on my bucket list for 30 years.
Was that where we're going in Cornwall?
Yes.
No, I haven't been to Cornwall. This will be my first time.
I've never been
Boz
to Cornwall.
Castle to the Witchcraft Museum. I am.
Is it? I thought it was Bowcastle. Am I wrong?
I looked it up a few times because
I've been saying this wrong for years.
I had to hear
it
it
could be
pronounced.
tomato.
I apologize, British people.
Might depend on where you're from in Britain. Coven.
So that was see. I love these questions because it does bring out the great feelings. My fourth one. We'll start with Ellie. What is an aesthetic or art tradition or something of another religious tradition, not your own, that you do feel inspired by? Like if you go to a place of worship or an art collection or something, or see clothing from something completely unrelated to witchcraft, what is an aesthetic that you still feel something from it?
I love stained glass windows. I love stained glass in general, and having visited lots of large cathedrals. I'm thinking though about there's a small church in the south of France where Henri Matisse designed their very modern stained glass windows for that church, and they're just breathtaking to me. And that one of his quotes was when he was talking. He and Picasso were both communists and they were atheists. They said they were. And he was taken care of by nuns when he had duodenal cancer and surgery, and they saved his life. So he went back to their church and donated the stained glass windows that he did. But he, in answering criticism for not being religious himself, he said, painting is my religion. Painting is me and God together. I don't know how you can get more religious than that, because he said that feeling of that was so powerful.
I never knew that Matisse did it. I knew Chagall did, because he is the ones. My in-laws actually saw his stained glass last year, but I'm going to look that up. That's a great answer. But
I love stained glass windows. I love really heavy or what's it called?
Orthodox?
No, yeah, but the when there's all the statues and all
ornate.
the gilt gold, ornate, and
so
Rococo.
Christianity, though, is your
It's
answer.
Christianity, yes.
Western Christianity at its more liturgical.
Yeah, well, the big cathedrals with all the
not a
painting
mega church
and
in the Radio Shack.
No.
Yeah.
But let me think about this artistically. Anything else for beauty?
Or or spirituality, either one.
I like all the really pretty things, like the big goblets and the heavy gold incense swingers and all that kind of stuff. It really does kind of go back to the. And I'm so not interested in Christianity. How interesting that my answer.
But aesthetically, it's very beautiful.
Yes, no, and I like the ornate, overly done,
Baroque.
very rich
Yeah.
Baroque with tons of texture and colors, and you can smell.
Bleeding saints.
You can
It's very
smell
goth.
that gold.
Yeah.
I found some amazing places in Mexico touring. Small churches out in the middle of nowhere, and you go in and you're like, oh, holy mackerel.
The carving and all that.
Unbelievable.
What about you, Brian?
It was funny. The church, when I was younger, I got to go to some Catholic churches because I had friends or whatever, because we weren't Catholic. And I always thought they were very beautiful. I still think they're beautiful. However, I've always felt they're stale. So I didn't really it's just the beauty. I like to go just look, and I loved the look of it. However, when we were in Greece, and I think you were with me when we saw the Greek Orthodox churches, that
Dripping
was
in gold.
not stale. And one of my favorite parts about it was you could see the inner sanctum. They still keep that practice, which goes back to really Egyptian practices more so than Greek.
This Holy of Holies.
Yeah, the Greeks didn't, as far as I know, usually have an inner sanctum, but the Egyptians did. So the Greeks and the Romans usually had very open temples. Probably depend. Mystery cults would be different, I'm sure. But so I thought that was very beautiful, and that had a zap to it for sure. Obviously, the Egyptian aesthetic has always appealed to me from seeing Moses when I was a child. There's something
Cleopatra.
about just the way they look, whether they're wearing just a little linen skirt and jewelry, or whether they're fully in garb. They just look so. Their whole persona is an altar. Even the simplest farmer looks, magnificent in comparison to what we see today. They knew something about fashion. What was the whole question? Just
You're answering it. Any sort of beautiful or aesthetic or spiritual meaning that you take outside of your own tradition. So something that you can appreciate.
Can't be witchcraft. So another thing that would actually really surprise people is I kind of have like a bit of jungle wouldn't be the right word, but I was really fascinated with, we went to St. John's and some of the Virgin Islands, and was centered for the Taino Indians. Taino, I always said it wrong. Taino Indians.
Yep.
Where they worship the goddess Atiba was her name. So we got to go to the sacred waterfall of Atiba, and it was funny because we were with two Christians. We were with a magician, a Christian, and whenever we said Atiba, it would start raining. And so it got to the point whenever we said Atiba, it would start raining, and the Christian would say, "Don't say the name, Brian. Don't say the name." But it's this very much like Egypt, but in more of a raw nature paradise vibe that really appeals to my inner being. In fact, I'm not going to without getting into it, I've had spiritual dreams where that was the aesthetic of the people in the dreams, that we were more Garden of Eden jungle-esque, if that makes sense. But I know that's not officially a jungle. Mini rainforest? I don't know.
I just, maybe. Could be.
So I don't know. That's my idea. Those would be my non-witchcraft ideas.
I like those.
Come to the tip of my tongue.
My last question, Ellie, we'll start with you, is do you still have particular items from your magical pilgrimages, and are they important to you in your magical practice?
I don't know if I can legally tell you.
I have a lot.
Yeah, nothing bad, because
Right.
we've not destroyed anything.
But I won't go into what I have. I absolutely love my things I've collected from my magical pilgrimages. And in fact, I've been on, that's why I go places. It's a magical pilgrimage. I want to go to the place to find the magic there. So yeah, I have a list of things that I'm looking for. Some of my favorites are books I bought in old bookshops, magical books, like in England. And then I write my name and when I bought it and where I was when I got the used book. Like my Eden Grey Tarot book I got in Cambridge, Yeah, and do I use the stuff magically today? Yeah, you better believe it. So I have some really fabulous things, and I do work, when I'm working magic at home, I do use things that I have collected and that I love and I treasure. Statuary, for instance, things I bought in Egypt. They're just beautiful Egyptian-made statuary. Of course I use them. I think they're fabulous. I've used my books. Yeah, I probably won't say more than that about them and about my magical
we probably all have a
practice,
couple
right?
where we're like, well.
But really, they're just so.
I saw Levi chipping off part of stone.
No, you did not.
What
I would never.
What I would like is.
He did fall into it, though.
I'd like a human
Do
skull.
you remember that you
Wait.
I want a human skull, but I don't have that yet.
Right. You can have Christians when he dies.
It's going to be hard to get all that skin off of his head.
Brian?
Well, this bracelet's from Egypt. So yeah, of course. I've got. I have a. I don't think it would consider to be smuggling, but I have a branch from Neme actually that I don't know for sure, but it was below an oak tree down by the lake. So I'm assuming I was assuming. So I have that. Little stones and shells and things like that I've gotten from various places I've been to. So yeah. I don't know why you want to take a bit home. We're going to give it a caveat here. Don't take things you're not supposed to.
No, it's very bad at the airport.
Yeah, don't take things from actual structures. Don't take things from historic sites. Don't take things from like
plants that are
coral
invasive.
reefs or anything like that.
It's very dangerous to bring certain plants and stuff into the U.S. if they're not native. The one thing I do have that I think I can
Which
share.
I probably did smuggle that branch, really.
It's oak, though.
Yeah.
The one thing I think I can share that I think is cool is all of my initiations in my cup in the last 2 years. They're because this is not there's obviously water. There is a splash of water from the Nile next to the Temple of Philae that I put in it.
Brought some for me.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. I still
Got
have
a
it.
little tiny bit of
It's
that.
above our altar in New Orleans. We have the Nile water next to an Isis.
Which I always love that because there's a couple things that made me think about this. Why these were my questions. One was because we're all going to the Grand Sabbath in
Christian
Cornwall.
got water from the Glastonbury well and things like that. Yeah.
Like, because we're all going to the Grand Sabbath and we've all traveled a lot for spiritual pilgrimages. And then the second was, it was common in the old mystery cults. The priests in the cult of Isis would travel to Egypt to bring the water back.
Yeah, so they could
keep the pictures of it in the temples.
The pilgrimage.
Yeah, they went on pilgrimages.
What would be the Alexandrian pilgrimage?
We're doing it in June.
To go in June, but maybe going to one of the buildings Alex and Maxine lived in.
I've done it. I was just going to say,
You've done it.
me and Val, Val had probably been there before, but Val brought me to the old location of the Temple of the Mother in Clinical Gardens, which the London Covenant was right across the street. So they just moved across the street. But, I remember the film where the witches were sitting on the steps because the Temple of the Mother was actually downstairs in a basement flat. So I went there. The woman who they know the woman that lives there now, and of course I wasn't going to disturb her, but I was told if I would have knocked on the door and said, "Do witches live here?" she would have entertained me, but we didn't do that. But yes, so I've been there. That was it was a weird thing I wanted to do. Like, I want to go there because it was a power place, right? It really is.
We went to the basement of Treadwell's.
Yes, that and Gardner had
not Treadwell's, the Atlantic Books.
Yes,
Atlantis.
Well,
Atlantis.
we did Treadwells as well, but
Yeah.
Atlantis.
But that's where Gardner met.
Atlantis was where Gardner met McGregor Matthews, I believe. A lot of people were there back in the day.
We did that one.
Workshops and rituals even down there, I guess. But yeah, we've been there. So yeah, places like that. There is a Serapeum in London. That's beautiful to go there, where they found statues of Isis. It's a Mithra.
Mithraeum?
Mithraeum, that's what I meant to say. But they found statues of Isis in Serapis.
There was a temple of Isis in London.
Oh yes, and Diana and all that sort of thing, and probably all of them.
The Romans.
So they've now discovered that the Romans lived further west than they ever thought they did. So yeah, they were kind of a thing, the Romans.
I love spiritual pilgrimages, though, don't you?
Yes.
Like
because we're in America, and
I know.
There's not there are things here if you're Native American,
of course.
But other than that, it's not here really, is it?
It's harder here if you're not drawn to native spirituality. Then yes, although there's a big one.
Open this one.
Poverty Point is not far from where we are. That's a big one.
It?
For you.
I've got
a couple.
Oh, okay, all right.
So I want to tell everybody who's watching, we have 30 minutes left in the show. If you want to call in while they pour this wine,
whatever.
309-463-3377, 309 Goddess. I'm also going to go through the chat if you're shy, and I will answer questions that people have, because we've been getting a ton of comments. We love that you all watch. We see all your comments from social media, from YouTube, Facebook, etc.
Right. Thank you.
So if you have a question and we didn't answer it, or because we had so many comments tonight, don't forget, don't be afraid to put it back in the chat.
We'd love to have you call in, because it is we have no guests tonight, but we were able to take up quite a lot of time. But we've got 30 minutes left, so we'd love to hear from you. If you're not brave enough to call in, Levi will.
Our callers are our guests.
Questions, but we love to get phone calls, especially from attractive gentlemen.
No, that's not a requirement.
It's not. I didn't say it was a requirement.
He just said it was a joy. So I saw one I
liked
really wanted us to get to, because it goes to some of the questions that were asked, which was Dolores, where she said she had heard in the community of witches this debate that goes on sometimes between the term orthopraxy and orthodoxy. What are your thoughts on that debate, Brian?
I think it's a cop out. Let me hope I get my vocabulary right. So orthopraxy and what was the other one? Orthodoxy. So think orthopraxy means where you just basically do the ritual the way it's supposed to be.
The practice is the most important part.
The praxis. That's the big thing. I think it's cop out. But I approach witchcraft and Alexandrian witchcraft as a religion and a philosophy, whereas I feel like that's actually more important than ritual in a way. And I feel like if you're just doing a ritual because you're supposed to do the ritual that way, well, that's what we would call empty ritual. And Alexandrians don't care much for empty rituals. So I've always found it to be a cop-out. And usually when the conversation has come up, it's because the initiates are in several magical traditions, often including ATRs where they are engaging in animal sacrifice. And that was the basis of this conversation beginning in these groups. Why it continues, or if it's as popular as it was at one point in time, I don't know. I was central to one of those conversations, watched it emerge, and they briefly shut up when Patricia Crowther told them all off about it, because I had Gardnerians say to me, well, I don't care if someone kills a bunny outside of the circle in voodoo, as long as they don't do it inside a Gardnerian circle. And that's just not my way of thinking. If you're a priest, which is what Patricia Crowther came out, she said a priest is a priest. Priest and priestesses are that in and outside of the circle. You don't leave it behind. It's not a mummer's play. And I think it just comes from people who want to collect campfire badges. And, ooh, I'm Gardnerian. Ooh, I'm Alexandrian. Ooh, I'm voodoo. Ooh, I'm this. Ooh, I'm that. And it's not my cup of tea. And I realize that some people do it out of curiosity, life changes, exploration. And so there are times when it happens as a part of a natural progression. But that's called a person really just not knowing what they believe.
I have to give a shout out to Craig. I love this comment. He said, orthopraxy, the joy of hanging out with others and doing the same thing over and over again, but for who knows what reason.
Exactly.
It's like, that's such a good comment, Craig. It's so like, why? Why are you even here? Yeah. Right? Like, I love that.
I don't. I mean, that's very Masonic, really, isn't it? I mean, that doesn't apply to all Masons, because some Masons work with the light, but a lot of Masons, it's just, the ritual's just part of being a Mason.
We have 2 callers.
Oh, yay.
Hi, is this Rachel?
Hi, how are you guys doing?
Doing well. What is your question, Miss Rachel?
I want to ask you guys about amulets and talismans.
Sure.
So, do you believe for amulets and talismans that are made out of any type of metal, stones, or gemstones or other materials that have some type of magical, energetic, or spiritual properties, and where they were crafted in cities and countries that were known for pagan or polytheistic religious practices or worshiping?
Were they known for that?
Or would they come from those countries, is your question, Rachel?
Yeah, like Egypt or Greece or other pagan or polytheistic countries that people used to worship ancient gods and goddesses.
Sure. Ellie?
Well, an amulet is an object. I think this is right. An amulet is an object that you wear or use for protection. A talisman is something you make to connect to some sort of divine principle or God form or spirit. Is that right?
That's a definition. A definition is that amulets are for protection and talismans are for purposes outside of that. But that's just a definition. In some senses, they're the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people use those words interchangeably, but I read that they did have different meanings.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if you're asking. So
in
yeah,
my book, I give the meaning you just said.
Yeah, okay.
But technically speaking, it can be both, and also charms are thrown in there as the same thing. So it just depends.
like a rabbit.
I think
foot.
also I would say to your question, Rachel, that I think that it's much more common in the ancient world in sort of areas where these gods were worshipped when they did create amulets for gods. They didn't have the concept of stone correspondence that we do in neo-pagan New Age, quote unquote, New Age spaces. It wasn't this idea that Chalcedony is the stone of this particular. You get that sometimes, for example, in magical books. So, for example, this idea that copper is associated with Venus because she's from Cyprus, and Cyprus was the island of copper. You do have those connections. But it was also okay to just write a prayer on the back of a stone, right? If you wanted to. But there are certain stones and metals that were associated with certain deities for a long time. Copper is the great example because
Lead.
Lead for Saturn. But copper,
Iron.
Copper literally,
Gold.
Cyprus literally means copper in Greek.
Okay.
It's the island of copper, and she was born on Cyprus. She's the Cypriot goddess. So there's a strong correlation there, and I think you get it with. Oak trees and Zeus. That's a huge one. Jupiter, because it's at the Oracle of Dodona, where his oracle was. Olive trees with Athena and with Athens.
I'm not sure I entirely understood the question.
I think she was linking the modern use of correspondence stones to ancient culture.
But also, I think she was also asking, did they have power? I mean, I'm going to say that sometimes a found object does have a lot of power. In nature, you pick it up and you're like, this shell is really important for me. This is an amulet for my love life or my fertility. This shell, you feel it.
Yeah.
Then you have the things you make of some types carved into stone or on the back of a gemstone, a talisman to do a magical purpose. Does that maintain its power after the owner gives it away or dies or something? I'm going to say yes. I think good magical ritual would empower the object. And I think deity statues are ensouled during particular rituals also.
Oh, that's big in Theurgy.
Right? And then you'll
Neoplatonism.
find a statue or, at antique shops and stuff, I definitely check out psychically when if I'm going to buy something magical. I passed by once at a flea market a rabbit skin pouch that was part leather and it was sewn together in rabbit fur, and it had little beads and things on it, and I just held it in my hands because it was wonderful, and it was like $10, and I was like, oh my God, I want this thing, and I picked it up and held it, and I was like, no, I don't. I just blessed it and put it back down. I was like, that's not good
not
It
energy
looked good
for
for a
me.
second.
So it had some sort of energy vibration about it.
Folklore, folk magic is filled with magical purposes for plants, animals, and minerals, right? And sometimes these things line up, and sometimes they don't. And it's gonna differ between culture. I think the correspondences we're encountering today, obviously, you can find some correspondences in the Key of Solomon and some of the grimoire traditions. I think the Golden Dawn really, really structured it more so than maybe it had been previously, because I think it was more folk magic before then, where maybe an amethyst will keep you from getting drunk. This was a a thought surrounding this crystal or whatever.
Yeah. And it's wild how they change. Amethyst used to be a precious stone before there were new mines of it felt. That's why like royal families in Europe have a lot of amethyst, because it used to be as like expensive and rare as diamonds. And then they found all these mines of it and it just like made it worthless. But it's not worthless, it's beautiful.
I have my Amber and Jet on
Let's take
today.
the caller.
Okay, this one I don't think will be surprised. Satan, is that you?
Yes. Hi.
Hi, it's been a while, Dark Lord. What's your question?
Yes. Well, they did it all for me. So, God, I wish I had asked that orthopraxy. I have so many opinions about that.
The problem with asking
and I can only
questions
ask questions, right? I can't make a statement.
Correct.
Correct.
Well, I do have
this
a
is our
question,
show
but I
and
also
not
have a
yours.
statement.
What is your question, Christian?
I
Satan.
guess I won't make a statement. So when you are faced with the challenge and you know that you are hewing to a particular tradition and you know that there is this, now I'm working in the statement, you're working in that balance between orthodoxy and orthopraxy, since both are valid in the craft, but you are facing the social winds of change. How do you stand strong for your tradition? You know, sort of like the Catholics, you know, Ellie mentioned earlier, but, you know, maybe they shouldn't have changed certain things.
Ellie
and I
would
know
also
Lori
make a
Cabot
good Grand Inquisitor.
chastises them for
You just have to
no
try
longer
it.
dressing like nuns. So how
Sure.
do you stand, how do you maintain your sense of truth
Well, I'm going to
of
go
what you're
first
doing?
Sure.
because it's my
Huh?
problem. It's my problem.
He's finishing his question. How do you maintain your sense of truth when you're
Yeah.
working in a tradition that you want to keep the orthodoxy and the orthopraxy, but you're faced with winds of modern questions and changes?
Sure.
Well, my answer is going to be, and I think everyone here, Ellie, Levi, and you, could say that it doesn't. I'm not going to change because of who's president or what's going on in the social world or whatever. You learn to navigate the conversation. So when it comes to like the social world and its changes, I try to learn how to navigate all my conversations around that in order to just not be a cruel person or mean person, to be sensitive. You know, a good example would be belly dancing. There are a lot of people who don't even like the phrase belly dancing now. It was called belly dancing. It was called belly dancing in its inception. It has always been called belly dancing. It will always be called belly dancing by people. But there are some people who don't like that phrase because they kind of want it to, they want to pay homage to the Mideastern roots and things like that. And, you know, well, unfortunately, this thing kind of developed in France as a way to entertain European men and get money out of them. You know, so it has older roots, but it still is belly dancing. You know, so this is just a small example. However, we don't, as a community, I mean, I'm not the teacher, Chris would be the one who would be doing all this, but she's not going to go out there and like make people feel bad about their ideas of this movement. She's going to be sensitive to that, you know, but the reality of it, she's also aware that it's always going to be called belly dancing by someone, you know, so it's just, that's, you know, I'm not speaking for her, but that's my example of this in a more mundane way. When it comes to my practices, I requested initiation, I requested to be taught, and I absorbed that information. I liked it how I found it. That's why I did it, you know, and I have not objected to any of our practices. None of our practices have ever made me feel weird. None of our practices have ever made me feel unincluded. None of our practices have ever done any of that to me. They could have if I would have wanted to be that way, but they didn't because I knew what I was getting myself into. I think I can say with strong confidence, anyone who approaches initiatory craft does know what they're getting themselves into. Even if they're on the outside, they can read enough to get a general idea of what actually is going on. And if they're not comfortable with that, it's probably a good idea to find something that they're more comfortable with. So I'm not going to make changes for people. I will, however, change my communication style as times go on, because that's just the nature of socializing. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I got you. Ellie, what would you add?
I would answer if someone came to me and said, Ellie, we see that you practice a real strong tradition that has canon, and maybe we use the word dogma, the authority, the book, the elders, and then the ability to perform the rituals really powerfully. So there's an authority. I would say to the questioner, I was given this system honestly and fairly with the tools, the liturgy, and the practice. And it works excellently as a religion if you want to worship the old gods, and if you want to do the work of the self. It works really well. The tools are there. So if I start changing this system based on my personal viewpoint, which may be compassionate and loving in something that maybe isn't quite canon, I can be that in my personal life, but I'm not going to change the tradition.
Are you sure?
Well, kind of, not a lot, but I'll be a little bit compassionate in my personal life. I honor the tradition as I was given it enough that I'm not changing it because of the tradition. I couldn't give it to someone else. I couldn't initiate them if I'd modified it for social pressure. It just wouldn't be anything. It'd be watered down. So
the social things just change all the time.
They change all the time.
You
but
know,
I would say
we could end up being in a world in the next decade that is so horrible that none of this matters. So it's like the social world changes, and you're stuck with whatever you're dealing with. We may be in a world in a decade from now where we can't safely do this podcast anymore.
You never know.
It doesn't mean we're going to stop practicing witchcraft.
I want to say something to that, Brian. Really important that I've thought about for years. If because it's been one of my crazy visions that I wondered, well, that's never going to happen. Well, now I'm kind of thinking about it might. That if I was ever in a society, because this happened so much in the past, where I was forced at gunpoint to buy into either the political power or the religious power, how would I handle it? And immediately I say, I would start lying so damn fast about how much I'm going to invest in
Jesus.
and care about that power or that religion. Immediately I would
What else
fold.
could you do?
But
I don't think anyone on here would get away with
but
that.
the caveat,
we would just be examples.
No, the caveat though for me immediately after that was, you save yourself so you can keep doing your tradition privately and in your mind. Nobody will take the things away from your mind, and you must keep it alive until this political power changes and you can teach it again. It would make me even more devoted. I would just have to be completely private about it and lie. But I would do it. That's been my moral question. Would I really lie and buy in, or would I say, no, I just can't do that. I can't become...
It's actually one of the best answers.
Yeah, the craft doesn't demand us to be martyrs.
No, but
it actually specifically says not to be.
And
right.
Quite frankly, this is going to probably jar some people, but initiates are allowed to lie to the general public.
Ooh.
I mean, it's part of our works. That
Well, we have to.
We don't want martyrs. Yeah,
but we have to keep things oath bound too. But isn't that interesting that it always came into me from like my spirit guide said, Ellie, what would you do about this? And I'd be like, I'm on it.
I could probably convince some people I was Christian.
You could convince me.
You have
on
been.
a bad day.
You have been.
Like if you just
personally.
completely snapped,
I mean, it could happen.
I'd still wait though.
But that was a fantastic question.
Yeah, really good question. Thank you.
You didn't answer
Thank
it.
you.
Oh, I forgot. I'm
Good
sorry.
night.
Good night.
Good night. Bye, Christian.
You don't have to answer if you don't want
No,
to.
I'll answer it. I'm going to drop the call. I'll answer it very quickly. Anything whenever I face a question like this, I come from a place of ethics. The craft requires me to embody love. The craft requires me to embody truth. The craft requires me to embody compassion, but also reverence. There's a lot of things that I'm compelled to form my ethics around. So that is my answer. I am very leery, though, of the trad groups within craft who talk about we're preserving the lineage against modern. Honey, you're modern. Mm-hmm. This is a modern religion.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, come on. It's like there are car companies older than this religion. Okay? Like, so we all need to calm down a little bit about the whole, like, we are preserving yes, we preserve it. I gave earlier what my triangle of authority is. I'm not stepping outside of that triangle, but I'm also not going to play some game where I'm pretending that we're all Orthodox bishops in the middle of 6th century Greece.
I think that everyone up here would say that if we felt craft was violating our ethics, we would leave it.
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
If I actually thought craft was violating
That's why I quit being a
ethics-
Christian.
Yes, exactly.
Because it violated our personal ethics.
But here's the thing about craft is that we're talking about these social media politics. A bunch of people saying something isn't craft.
No.
If the majority of the craft starts publicly saying things I disagree with, that's not the craft for me either. The craft is what's going on within my life, in my circles, and
it's
the
your
Book of Shadows.
initiation.
Yes. So I don't, as we said earlier, there's no central group, there's no central authority, and there's nothing worse than card-carrying initiates.
Oh my God, who want a Vatican or whatever, like for craft? Come on now.
Yeah. Card-carrying initiates. They just want the label. They want it to be regulated. They want to be in charge. They want to be in the biggest Facebook groups, and they want to use social consequences to wield power. And that's where autonomy matters. Because there are no social consequences outside your circle.
Right.
Yeah, you have to stand on your own 2 feet.
Yeah, I love
And
that.
I think that we have a deep appreciation for that.
Got another call.
No, that one, we'll have to call back and do the... So just as a heads up, guys, I had to drop a call just now that was waiting. If you call in, the auto screen is for you to give a name and a quick description. And the reason we do that is because it keeps out robocalls, it keeps out spam, things like that.
Pranks.
So
I mean, they could happen anyway, but...
you do have to kind of say it clearly.
we
for
promise
us.
we won't tell people, and I won't
No.
call you back at 2 a.m.
Nobody's going to call you back. It's totally fine. So I'm going to go through the comments while we wait. That person might call back, though. The orthodoxy was a big one.
Funny thing about social consequences, sometimes people think that they're wielding social consequences only to have that come full circle.
And it does. I mean, it just does.
Sometimes.
So Shelby has a great question, because this is something that comes up a lot, and I'll let you start. God help us, we'll be here all night. What is your answer to the people who still are very rigid online, who say that Wicca is the religion and witchcraft only a belief or practice?
Well, that's, I don't want to get too long-winded in it, because it's coming from vocabularies, right? So they're using a vocabulary that, first of all, says that word Wicca and the word witch are 2 different things, which they are and they are not. So in the inception of this movement, the people who brought you the word Wicca brought to you by Gerald Gardner. Obviously, the word Wicca predates Gerald Gardner by hundreds and hundreds of years, because it's Old English, right? So, but it was it is the ancestor of the word witch, period. So they're not actually different words. They're just the same word on different timelines. And they were not brought into our modern society as different words. Wicca was just the old word for witch. And we were taught that it essentially meant wise. That was the kind of the idea. And although some people could consider these things problematic, we really haven't been given a better version by anyone. So it's, essentially what I still go by. The word witch to me kind of means wise. I realize that may not be like a fact, but there's been nothing else to prove otherwise. So I'm going to go with that for now. It certainly is related to words like wise and wit, and I mean that's not negotiable. So I think that that's lack of education. So lack of education on the modern history of this movement, because they're speaking about the modern witchcraft revival in even having this conversation, but they're drawing upon other sources. So the idea that witchcraft is a practice is the idea that witchcraft is magic. And it means the same thing as magic. And I simply refute that. The Old English language had other words for magic, and we have other words for magic. Magic. Spell casting. Witchcraft is a bit of a nebulous word, because it does kind of have a verb to it. And, so I get all those things. And you've all heard my diatribe about this coming from colonialism, which it does. This is where it comes from. It doesn't come from the craft. The craft doesn't use the word witchcraft as magic. It's a way to describe our religion or a group of witches practicing witchcraft. So it's complicated. Those are correct usages. There's plenty of people speaking the English language that use witchcraft as a word for magic, but it really doesn't belong in the occult world. It should be well outdated by now.
I've started using it out of spite.
And my idea of what's going on in anthropology and archaeology right now, they tend to try to, in most conversations, avoid using that the way that, just kind of like the same reason they avoid using shamanism as much as they used to. They used to use shamanism for everything. But education, social constructs, all those sorts of things, I mean, it's come into their wind that this is a problematic word being used the way that it is now. So some of them try to use other words, unless they're on the topic of European witchcraft, of course. So I think it's just not real, that witchcraft, for some people, witchcraft, they're going to use witchcraft as a practice. My question would be a practice of what? What is it you think that it is a practice of? For me, for initiates, witchcraft and Wicca are Wiccan is the plural, so Wiccan and witchcraft are the same thing in modern English and Old English. Not pronounced that way. It was probably something like Witchion, I don't know, but and it probably wasn't even that, because there was probably accents and things that we don't have anymore.
I need a button that just screams like that girl on Charmed. I need to talk to you about Wicca.
Here's the whole thing. People don't understand. I don't dislike the word Wicca. The reason why that I started challenging it the way that I do is because I was challenging a system that needed to be undone. It has nothing to do with Gardner and Alexandria witchcraft. And I sort of feel like I've accomplished that goal. I'm not saying I singularly did it, but I'm not seeing it as much as I used to. A decade ago, it was everywhere, constantly. Every YouTube video was Wicca as a religion and witchcraft's a practice. It doesn't come on as much anymore. Certainly there are people who approach witchcraft as a magical practice, and they do it alongside their makeup tutorials. But I'm not seeing it in serious occult conversations anymore as much as I used to. In anthropological studies, like when you look at Margaret Murray, she's the one who coined the term operative witchcraft. Versus ritual witchcraft, which me and Ellie would change to religious witchcraft. But she's doing an anthropological study. And she's talking about, Europe and England specifically in some of these conversations. So it's not being done from an occult perspective. It's not being done from a witchcraft perspective. It's being done by what most people would consider an outdated anthropologist. So you've got people in the movement. If you're going to approach this as a modern living witchcraft revival, you should be listening to our elders, not an anthropologist from the 1930s, and not a Christian, and not the guy who just went randomly dug up Egypt and said they were practicing witchcraft. You probably shouldn't be following those people for the narrative. If you choose to, it exists. The word is used on the spectrum. People use it in D&D.
Yeah. Christian is tagging me over and over again where I'm a linguist, and it's like, Christian, I love you to death, but like, this is not how linguistics works. You're talking about what's called prescriptive linguistics, which is the idea that because it's etymologically pronounced a certain way, we should still do that and say witcha instead of Wicca. That's it. I'm going to be really honest with you. No linguist would agree with you. That is a layman's understanding of linguistics. So like, once you get to the higher levels of understanding linguistics, words are allowed to change naturally, and it is their usage that dominates, not their prescription.
Now I'm going to challenge you. If a word can change, it can change back.
Sure.
And I'm not a linguist. I'm a priest.
No, I'm not talking about that.
Yeah,
I'm not talking about your thing about Wicca. I'm talking about this one particular thing about like this. Is, what you're saying is just not how language works. So like, I'll give you.
You didn't announce to us what he said. You just started going on.
Oh, about the pronunciation of it. Like we should say Witcha, not Wicca.
Well, I think it has a very, very valid point in combating the misinformation, because people are so stupid that they think because it sounds different, it's a different word. They don't even realize it's in the English language. They are really that stupid, and I hate to say it, but it is true. They're that stupid. So they think Wicca is half these people think Gerald Gardner made it up. That he created the word Wicca.
Sure.
And so it's really, so I disagree with you. The problem with taking academia in any merit, taking religion, taking history, and trying to make it seamless is not relevant to our conversations.
No, I'm not trying to make anything seamless.
I'm just talking everyone, not you in general. So in my mind, the reason why I like to point, I say Wicca when I'm having a conversation where I need people to understand I'm talking about that. I do not say Wicca in the magical circle anymore. And I think there is value in pronouncing it correctly, because a long time ago, Christian and I had a conversation about the word warlock. This is, to say how long ago it is. Right. And I was kind of on the course where you are. I was like, well, this isn't popular anymore. Yes, it had a little thing in the English language. Yes, maybe it meant this at one point in time, but this is how it is now. And Christian said to me, well, if words can change, why can't they change back? Because if you're going to state change, that's a straw man's argument. If you're going to state change as the thing, well, it can continue to change. So, and it can change back. And I've seen it happen with the word warlock. I went from a time where people were coming into our stores and threatening to shoot Christian with a gun because he was using the word warlock, to people not caring anymore. Because people just kept pushing back about it.
Right.
And so I think educating people of the correct usage of the word Wicca makes them realize, I'm not saying we should walk around and start calling ourselves witches necessarily, because I don't speak Old English, but I think it definitely teaches people why these words are so similar. That the people that actually spoke them, did not call it Wicca. Like, no one in England called it Wicca until Gerald Gardner and Alex Sanders put it out there and didn't know how to pronounce it. And so, yes, common language it didn't really come out to the 80s, because in the 50s and 60s, no one really knew what it was. Maybe late 60s. 70s, I'll give it 70s. It started coming out, but it was 80s and 90s it became popular in America. So people haven't even known how to mispronounce it very long. It's only 2025, guys. Let's not put this in Holy Script and say this is how it is now. It can change. I disagree with you on that.
We can disagree. Yeah. That's not my point anyway.
Give me another decade.
It's kind of funny because I don't disagree with any of that. My point was words change naturally in terms of pronunciation, and also how it was originally pronounced is irrelevant. I'll give you.
You probably don't know. Really.
You can drop this very quickly. Ellie, what's the capital of France? What's the capital of France?
Paris.
Paris, not Paris. You don't speak French, so there you go. Boom, we're done. That's not
I would
how
have
that
said
works.
Paris. I thought you were going for
exactly.
I didn't
right?
know it was Paris. I was really
or
thinking
how about
it was in another city.
Bourbon Street versus Bourbon,
right?
Bourbon.
Come on,
Bourbon
language's pronunciation stage was my
I'm
only
not,
point.
I want to bring
and
in,
he's right, and I know
that's my
that.
only point.
I just don't like it when people make it this canon thing, because I think that
we actually agree. We just have different approaches. You're trying to educate. I'm not at this point. I'm being spiteful, so I just yell and say, I'm a Wiccan.
It's all fine.
I want to bring in another dimension.
Let
to
me
this
finish this,
conversation.
and then it's all your microphone. I just want to finish
Bless
this thing. Patricia Crowther did this video that unfortunately somebody took down, and somebody asked her about the word Wicca. And she literally says, and I don't know if this was coming from a place of old school or real education, I don't know. She goes, it's fine. It's a modern made-up word, but it's fine. We didn't use it that way. And that was it. That was the only conversation. It's a modern made-up word. It's
and we
fine.
didn't use it. I love that we're in here. Ellie, you get the last word.
Yes, everything.
I just want to bring in another dimension to word pronunciation and usage. I find in conversation, if you are talking about a political or religious subject, individual words are incredibly emotive for the individual. They represent symbols and philosophies and feelings, powerful feelings about what they think is right and true in the world. Like when someone asks you, do you believe in God? For me, I say first, well, you have to define God. I don't, we'd have to agree on the definition of the word before I could start to talk about it. Other people launch right in with the power of what that word means because it's their emotional attachment. We just witnessed it tonight about the word witch and Wicca. I have really strong emotional distaste for the word Wicca, and that was because that's what when I
exists in your life.
It does, and when I was exposed to it,
I don't call myself one.
I generalized it, and I said, "Oh, this word means those people in that kind of way of life," and I was like, "Yuck, I don't want to do that." To me, witchcraft, when I saw that or heard that, I was like, "Now that's exciting. That's energetic to me. That seems really cool." Where the other things seemed really dorky. Okay, so
also that's one of my soapboxes.
But it's emotional. My point is, it's emotional, and you can look at a word etymologically. That's not the right way to say it.
Etymologically.
In history, pronunciation, usage, what cultures used it, when was it appropriated, etc. That's one way to look at language and word meanings. But I think in religion, it's incredibly emotional content that's really coming out in the word usage.
Christian,
we're out of time, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, we are out of time. You can call back next season.
Or put it in a post.
Yes, we might have misunderstood you, but the point is it got us going in a conversation.
It did.
A real good conversation.
And that happens.
We're out of time.
So
I gotta go
we
home.
are out of time. I have to eat. He has to eat.
Buy your WitchCon tickets and see us all in action on WitchCon.
You can follow this up at WitchCon during one of the Zoom meetings. Christian.
Zoom meeting. We will argue about linguistics in a Zoom meeting. I will love it.
It's a soapbox for me only because it's Yeah, it just is. But also, part of me doesn't care either. You know,
I wouldn't know, honey. I'm a Wiccan.
there's two aspects.
It's funny. Like, it's fun. It is. To be like, I have no idea, honey.
Do you remember when I
don't
posted
read
that?
them big spell books. I'm a Wiccan.
I posted on your wall in caps, we need to talk about Wicca, and no one touched it with a 10
No one understood we were joking.
No, I think they thought I was like mad about it.
Okay, it's
so
the end.
Okay, so I'm gonna make the announcement. So this is the end of season 6. I'm not exactly sure when we'll start season 7, and we'll probably be in 2025. But we do have the Grand Sabbath this summer and other things.
Big things in the corporation.
The three of us will be talking about when we're gonna do it, and we'll announce it. But usually our breaks are only kind of like 3 to 4 months long, depending on the year. So we'll discuss when we think it's strategically best to start again. But yes, you'll see us all soon. Until then, enjoy watching all the reruns. Did you knock me off already?
No, I didn't. No, you're good.
All right.
Watch
Goodbye,
the reruns.
everyone.
Thank
Have a
you.
wonderful
Thanks for reaching
night.
out to us
Gone.
too. Thank you.